Welcome to another episode of Live with Laura. I'm your host, Laura Hettiger, and this conversation is for any of you who has stayed up maybe a little too late because you were reading through a book and you just had to know what happened next. Or for any of you who finished a book, set it down and thought, I wish it continued. What is going to happen to these characters? We are going to find out the mastermind behind suspense, putting these characters together, and how someone develops a story that we just can't get out of our heads. There's a local St. Louisan who has done just that, and she is being so gracious to take time out of her own writing to be here with us to talk about her process. Her name is Debbie Baldwin, and you are looking at her newest book, The Architect of Deception. Debbie, it is so good to see you.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me.
I am so honored to have you here because you really are giving up a big chunk of your day. And writers, from what I've understood, the inspiration can hit almost any time.
That's true. However, I would say that the urge to find a reason to procrastinate can hit almost any time, too. So thank you. This is a very nice excuse.
What a good point on that, because that's what I think about. Even going back to college, whenever you had a big paper due, so many of us would procrastinate, put it off. When money is on the line and your name is on the line, you can't do that.
Yeah, it's a job.
But what a rewarding job.
Very much so. I love it. I really feel like it was, I started late, writing late in my career and writing novels late in my career. And I do feel like it's what I should be doing.
But you have always been a passionate reader and writer.
Correct.
Let's talk about your early years. Born and raised here in the St. Louis area.
Yes, you can ask the question. The answer is John Burroughs School.
Mm-hmm. What did you learn at John Burroughs that still sticks with you today?
I think it was just that the nurturing of a curious mind is probably the greatest gift that John Burroughs gave me. That fostering that curiosity. A lot of times with these books, people will say, where do you come up with these ideas? And I think it is due to kind of seeding my thought process with a lot of what ifs, or how is that done? And it gave way to a very vivid imagination, which was probably mine to begin with, but it's certainly indulging it more because of that kind of supportive environment of John Burroughs.
And curiosity is so beautiful, and it's something that I worry about that today's kids don't have.
It's times are changing. It's going to be very interesting to see how AI impacts that, how COVID had impacted that. They say that fewer people are reading, and really reading is the way to, I think, inspire and make people provoke people's thoughts. It's, you see this weird, and I think I'm already guilty of it. I've backed off of it now. But when AI really kind of first hit, you sort of find yourself incapable of making a decision because you're like, I'm going to ask AI, which book ad would be more effective. And then I'm going to ask it how I should word the ad. And then I'm going to ask it how much I should bid on, how much I should spend on the ad. And 6 months ago, I was doing that all by myself perfectly fine and having a lot of success with ads. Mm-hmm. So why all of a sudden am I incapable of doing all that? Because AI is this crutch that I don't want, and I don't like the way it almost immediately impacted my decision making and my independence of thought.
Mm-hmm. And you see it all the time. If you're scrolling social media, you can instantly notice if someone has used AI for their post.
Yeah.
And I think right now, when we are all craving connection, we want the human thought.
Yeah.
And you have such a beautiful gift of putting in the human thought into your books.
I agree. And I think that it's, I think as technology evolves, as specifically that technology evolves, there will be less invasion in the creative space. I'm hoping. We'll have to see how it all plays out. There was I read this interview with this woman who just writes AI novels. She openly admits it. It's her business. She's not a writer. She's creating AI novels, by the dozen. And I actually saw this interview with a writer who was asking if there should be a special section in bookstores for AI created works. And he said, yes, the trash can, which I thought was the perfect answer.
Yes, not where I thought you were going. But yes, I would want to know if this is all being generated through ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You've mentioned creative and curiosity. Those two aspects of your personality led you to Princeton.
Yes.
Why Princeton?
It took me about 30 seconds of walking onto that campus to know that that's where I wanted to go. It was instinctual for me. I really felt like it was where I belonged, and it was an amazing 4 years. I studied classics and English literature, and, you made the best friends of my life. This book is actually dedicated to my little group of women. We call ourselves the Tiger Posse because Princeton are the Tigers. So it was an amazing experience, unforgettable.
At the time when you were there with the Tiger Posse, did the thoughts for now the 8 books that are out, published, and the 9th one you're working on, did these characters ever come into your mind that early on?
Well, I had to laugh because this book and the book I'm working on now in particular, for some reason, I know why it is. It's that this book is set in a very high society, Manhattan society, the 0.001%. And the second book in the series is, these boys who are born to privilege, these young men who are born to privilege, and they are the main characters in the story. And obviously, Princeton, when I was there, it was a haven for that echelon of society, certainly not exclusively. Michelle Obama was in my class. Jeff Bezos was in my class. It was a wonderful, diverse population, but part of that population was that world. And my cousin-in-law, one of my best friends from college who married my husband's cousin, we were all on vacation up in Michigan together, and she's reading the book, and she's like, oh, you use this nickname and you use this name. And I'm like, I hadn't even realized I was doing it, but a lot of our extended friend group from college have these great, unusual, interesting names, and I've borrowed them. So the character names definitely I'm drawing on, and the experiences too.
And you paid attention to the conversations, and even though you were at Princeton, removed from Manhattan, you were picking up on the tendencies that some of these people of privilege have, the things that they talked about, and all of that curiosity stuck with you enough to create these books.
Definitely. And, I've always had a very good memory. When I was younger, it was eidetic. I remembered everything and everything. So all that stuff is, kind of filed away. I had a reader comment in her review that she was a wealth manager for a large bank in Charlotte, and that the author captured that world so subtly and accurately. And I was like, floating. from that because, you don't want to be too heavy-handed. These characters aren't marching around like the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. They're not in Fendi head to toe and, talking about brands. It's a much more, as they say, wealth whispers. It's a much subtler brand of elitism.
But that also builds trust on you doing research and paying attention too, because whenever we immerse ourselves, whether in a book or a television show or a movie that depicts our real life in a way, we instantly notice that's wrong. That would never happen.
Yes.
I do it all the time. In journalism shows, I'm like, did you talk to one person who's ever done broadcasting? So the fact that the wealth manager is like, this is spot on.
Yeah.
But that's another level of pressure that you have as a writer to make sure you get those nuances correct.
Yes, absolutely. There's an episode of Sex and the City when Carrie is dating the writer Berger, and he comes out with his book, and she loves it, and she says, well, there's just one little thing, the scrunchie.
The scrunchie.
And she's like, a fashionable Manhattan woman would never be wearing a scrunchie, and he's like, it breaks them up. They break up over it. But that's the kind of thing I would notice in a book.
Yes.
Totally.
I knew I liked you, but the fact that you just talked about Sex and the City, I knew I liked you even more. Debbie, what's interesting about you, though, is you mentioned this. You came to this aspect of your career a little later in life. You've done a lot, and a lot here in St. Louis.
Correct.
After Princeton, you go to UVA for law school?
Correct. I went to the University of Virginia School of Law in Charlottesville. My dad always used to joke that I never took the bar when I graduated. I knew I didn't want to practice law, but I loved law school, adored it. Now, talk about nurturing your curiosity and teaching you how to look at a problem from all different sides. There would be no better training for a mystery writer than law school because it's problem solving at its core. It's so yes, that was an incredible education. But my dad always used to joke that I owed him at the time it was $128,000 because I did not go into the law. So he was disappointed, but I loved it.
So what did you do after law school?
After that, let's see, I did a little speech writing. I worked for Merritt's for a while in marketing. After that, I went and I ran the contracts department at Contemporary Productions, which was the concert promoters. At the time, it was called Riverport Amphitheater, and the pageant and all that stuff, going over artist contracts, which was really fun, and sort of legal.
Legal adjacent.
Yes, exactly. And, learning that, Bret Michaels didn't like peanut M&Ms. He wanted plain M&Ms or, all the just little peccadillos in the contracts was fun, and it was a great group of people. And then let's see, after that, after that was when I embraced writing wholeheartedly. And that was at Ladue News, where I was a columnist called The Tangential Thinker, which was this if I'm flattering myself, it was this very Irma Bombeck style column. My children were little. I nicknamed them Cranky, Whiny, and Punch, and wrote just these kind of crazy stories of parenthood with kids. And they really grew up in that column. So it was, when they were babies, it was articles about Ferberizing. And when they were 3 and 4, it was articles about car seats or taking a stroller on a plane or, and comparing it to life, when I was growing up and rolling around in the way back of the station wagon or whatever. And then I also did the movie reviews for Ladue News, which was really fun.
And what a beautiful gift you gave to parents
to
show that chaos is okay. Because especially in today's world, we think, oh my gosh, we're the only ones struggling staying calm when my son has asked me for the 59th time for something. And the answer is... Right.
When your son is throwing himself on the grocery store floor and you're, and you're looking around at all the other shoppers.
Hi.
And like, We're just having a moment.
Having a moment, yes. Whiny, Cranky, and Punch. Did your kids appreciate those nicknames?
True to their personalities, my daughter did not. She was cranky, and she didn't care one way or the other. She just kind of ignored it. Whiny was my middle son, Charlie, who was horrified. And then Punch was Beecher, my youngest, who thought it was the coolest thing in the world and used to say, "I'm Punch," and he used to jump all around.
So you work for Ladue News for a long time, and then eventually you are part of a team that comes up with a television show.
Correct. That was, it wasn't a team. It was my best friend, Kim Sella, and I, along the lines of being frustrated mothers. We would meet on Thursday nights for a girls' night at a bar. And we'd sit at this high top table, and she said one day, she came in and said, "I have an idea for a TV show." She was a therapist. And she said, "What about a therapist, a show about a therapist whose personal life is crazier than his professional life?" And I said, "Oh, so like a modern day Bob Newhart." Mm-hmm. And she said, "Yes, exactly. But, a guy who's on Tinder and a guy who's, commitment phobic and a guy who's, got patience with modern problems." And we wrote this pilot. At the time, the show was called "And We're Out of Time," which is, what a shrink says at the end of a meeting. And it was about this psychologist, and he's got a best friend who's kind of a freeloader, and he is divorced and lives in New York City and has, funny. Each episode would start with this funny interaction with a client or patient, and then the planets aligned in the most unbelievable way. If any of your viewers or listeners have ever thought about or tried to come up with an idea for a TV show, the system in place is rigid and it is unshakable, which is you need an agent, you need a manager, there's a system that you follow. You don't just run into the head of Netflix and say, "Can I show you the script?" Mm-hmm. We had a situation where we had called a couple of friends who kind of tangentially worked in the business. One of them said, "I have a friend who's a producer. I can show him the script." That man, Jonathan Burkhart, said, "I actually know someone who's looking for a show like this." And he gave it to a director and who happened to be having lunch with an actor, Stephen Pasquale, from the show Rescue Me and The People vs. O.J. Simpson. Mm-hmm. And they literally sat at the lunch and kind of passed the pages back and forth and said, "Let's make this happen." So that group of people, Kim, me, the director, Stephen Pasquale, went to DirecTV and AT&T and said, "This is our show," and they bought it.
What I like about this story is you leaned in on the power of relationships. You weren't afraid to meet with the girlfriends on the Thursday night and just share in the camaraderie that comes with being moms.
Yes.
You weren't afraid to then reach out to those in your circle and say, "We have an idea. Will you help us?" And they weren't afraid to say, "Well, I know someone. Let me make this call."
And if there's one thing I ingrain in my kids all the time now, it is to do not let those connections fade from high school, from college, from graduate school. Make sure because that's a person you just never know. Mm-hmm. I want to reach out to my connections who are literary agents, who are, involved in television production or this or that, publishing. But, your husband's a doctor, my son's in medical school. You know, that's a connection we just made beyond the two of us.
Yes.
And that web is the secret to success. In almost every circumstance, if you can tap somebody and say, can you help me? And the truth is, in my experience, everybody wants to help.
Yes, because it makes us feel good.
Yeah.
We're selfish in that way.
And when people call me and say, can you read a script I wrote? Can you look at a chapter of the book I'm working on? Absolutely.
Yes.
I'd be happy to.
Because there's a big difference between asking for help and then asking for you to just do it for them.
Right.
You much rather want to help someone who has the idea and they just need an extra set of eyes or experience
completely.
to help them.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying this conversation. And we haven't even got into the page-turning part about how Debbie literally writes page turners, the whodunits, the, oh my gosh, what is going to happen next? So we are going to take a quick break. But as we do that, I encourage you to share this with the person in your life who always is reading a book. To me, that's my mom, Ginny. Hi, I know you're listening in real time. And my best friend, Christy, who, oh my gosh, she goes through so many books a year. So I'm absolutely going to be sharing it with them. And I encourage you to share it with those book lovers in your lives. We'll be right back with more of Live with Laura. This is the perfect pick-me-up on a hot Tuesday, staying inside in the air conditioning to read a really good book. And the person who writes really good books is St. Louis's own Debbie Baldwin. She just came out with her, let me double check, 8th book, The Architect of Deception. You are currently working on your 9th. Let's talk about your first 7.
Excellent.
The Bishop Security Series.
It is the Bishop Security Series. It's romantic suspense. The first book, False Front, the ebook is free. So if readers want to give it a try and see if it's to their taste, then they can download a book without any cost at all.
And what's so interesting about this is it is a series, 7 of them. So if you fall in love with the first one and the characters in the first one, you're going to want to find out what keeps happening.
You will gobble all 7 up. It is, each one features a different main character on the team. And each story is different. Each story is a standalone. So the first novel, False Front, is the origin story of how the Bishop security team came to be. And we have our main character who's a Manhattan billionaire, playboy, reckless, womanizer. He's on page 6 all the time, photographed in the Plaza Hotel fountain with a bottle of champagne and a supermodel. But in reality, he's this, can I say badass?
You just did. I like him already.
He's this badass naval intelligence officer who runs this covert team of former Navy SEALs doing rescue missions and doing off-the-books jobs for the government that, no one else can handle. So it's this, elite team of men and women, and he pretends to be this reckless playboy to keep the eyes off of what's really going on.
It's a double life. And I think sometimes even the people in our own lives, our coworkers, our friends, we do wonder, what's life really like behind closed doors?
Yes.
Especially
It's usually
not
for
to
someone
this
like
level.
Nathan Bishop,
Yes.
who, is obviously everyone's curious about him. He's famous and rich and handsome. And at the very beginning of the book, the young woman who will become his love interest is on a date, and she gets roofied. So she gets up from the table and she flees and bursts through the door of the conference room in the same hotel where he's holding a meeting, and he rescues her. And he cannot get her out of his mind. So 2 years later, when his publicist comes to him and says, we've got to clean up your image after you got caught in flagrante delicto on the roof of the Empire State Building. We need a journalist to come in and interview you. And this woman he's rescued is a reporter. So he says, I know who I want to interview me. And that's the beginning of their love story.
So I can already picture all of it. How, though, do you come up with these ideas? And will you also let our listeners and viewers know the very interesting timeline that you started writing False Front in and how maybe it helped the writing process?
Absolutely. And the answer to the first part of the question is I don't know. I just have a very vivid imagination. I'm not sure because I people ask me, even my friends are like, where do you come up with this stuff? And I don't know the answer. It's just in there, knocking around. But I started writing False Front at the end of 2019 and at the beginning of 2020, and it was right on the cusp of COVID, and it was a blessing, a silver lining, let's say, of the COVID pandemic, because once I published that independently, I knew immediately I wanted to follow up, and I knew exactly the story I wanted to tell, which was the second book is Nathan Bishop's best friend, 6'5" bear of a former Navy SEAL with this complicated past and, a tendency, he has attachment issues. So I wanted to talk about or write about the theft at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston, which happened in 1990, where 12 works of art were stolen and never recovered. And it's just, the story has always fascinated me. And so I've got the second book, which I wrote locked up during COVID, and I think I wrote it in 3 months. This dual timeline story of my theory of the theft, and then one of the paintings resurfacing in present day, and that's the thriller aspect of book 2, is that painting and everybody kind of being after it.
And the thriller aspect is just fascinating. I once read an article by J.K. Rowling that she was interviewed for, where she said pretty much on day one she knew how Harry Potter would end, with him taking on Voldemort. And spoiler, Harry wins. Thank God. Oh, I know. So is that, do you start a book already knowing the ending?
Sometimes. Rarely, I will say. I knew that particular book about the stolen painting, I knew how that would end. Most of the time, though, there was a quote. I saw this interview with Quentin Tarantino years ago where the interviewer asked him that very similar question, and he said he writes about half of every screenplay, and the characters write the other half. And I knew exactly what he meant, because once you start developing these characters and they're real to the writer, you can tell that character wouldn't do that. Or if you're thinking, I wanted it to be a big shootout in an old West town, but no, that character would never do that. Everything changes direction. A side character can become the bad guy that no one suspected. There's all kinds of different things, and I love not knowing, because when it's a surprise for me, it's a very effective surprise for the reader.
And that's the most exciting part when I pick up a mystery or a thriller. There was 3 books that I did a few years ago, all by the same writer, but standalone. None of the characters overlapped. It was
Gillian Flynn.
Yes.
Sharp Object.
Yes. So
Gone Girl.
Yes.
And I can't remember the third one's called.
So read Gone Girl first, didn't suspect the ending. So went into the next one saying, okay, whatever I suspect, that's not going to be it. Choose something different. I did. Still wrong. The third one, I'm like, I have to get this one right. Again, vastly, vastly wrong. And that's what's so interesting about people like you who are suspense writers.
Well, and the secret is the jackpot for me of a mystery novel is if you don't figure it out but you could have. And that is what is that's, as they say in Home Alone, that's the silver tuna. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that's very difficult to attain. And with Architect of Deception, which is really the first 7 books, the Bishop Security series are not whodunits. They're not a mystery. There are twists for sure, but it's straight up suspense and romance. This is a mystery novel and a thriller. So when the resolution comes, the goal is to have the reader blown away, but also going back and going, yep, I should have seen it. It's right there. She told us in black and white.
And is that some of the feedback that you get,
Yes.
that people finish the book and then they read it again to see what they missed the first time?
And that's the highest praise for me.
Yes. Something that I've noticed in the research about your books is the main characters are all men.
Except for, well, in the Bishop Security series, the team has one woman, which is, she is their cybersecurity expert, and she is the star of book 4.
Okay.
But her love interest is also on the team. So technically, yes, they're all male characters who are the leads. And in the Architect of Deception, which will be an upcoming trilogy of 3 standalone stories, those main characters are male as well. I don't know why.
Do you see yourself writing one based around a woman?
I feel like I love writing women, and I love writing really capable women. There are no shrinking violets in these stories. And when you're talking about a romance, the team member may be a male, but the woman is equal, if not more important in the story. For example, in book 5, the Bishop security operator, Steady, is this southern kind of easygoing guy, but this chemist moves in next door to him. They live in it's all set in South Carolina on the Outer Banks, and so he has a beach house, which would be, a sort of fictitious Kiowa Island maybe, or something like that. I know my geography is getting a little screwy, but the pressure. Moves into the beach house next door, and she is the driving force of the story, absolutely. So, and that happens, Emma, the female character in False Front, who is Nathan Bishop's love interest, is an equally capable, badass woman, like he's met his match with her. So it's, even though the team members are men, the women have an equal role.
Something else that I've noticed and you've talked about is the settings. This one you're talking about is partly near Kiowa. Love Kiowa. My first market was Charleston, so already I want to read this book even more. But you're focusing on the very, very elite of New York City. Would you ever base anything in St. Louis?
Yes. And it won't be these 3 books, but, St. Louis, it's funny writing about your home. I wrote a script. It was my first book I wrote in law school a million years ago, which was set in St. Louis. It was about a son conspiring to steal his estranged father's estate, that he knew he was going to be cut out of the will, and so he's trying. It was a thriller. It was a legal thriller. It was called Dead Hand, which is a reference to a legal term, dead hand control, which means a testator, a dying person trying to control the behavior of his heirs from beyond the grave. And it wasn't a very good book. I was, just getting my feet wet in it. I should have picked it back up again. But it was set in St. Louis. It was a wealthy St. Louis guy. And the family was old St. Louis, old money. And I changed all the names of the streets and everything. But it's strange writing about your hometown.
Oh, I bet.
I admire authors who do it. Elin Hildebrand has got a big book out right now, and she's lived on Nantucket for, I think she said 30 years. A lot of Dave Barry in Florida, a lot of authors are famous for writing about the town where they live. So I do want to revisit St. Louis, and I want to do it soon. It's so architecturally interesting. It's a perfect size. It has that kind of, there's a quality to it, haunted quality, and not in a negative way, in a historic way that I love.
And especially because some people view the Midwest as flyover country, it would be eye-opening to other readers that, no, there's a lot more here.
Yes, I agree, 100%. It's, I mean, I was born here. I lived away for many years. When we were back again in New York when we were shooting the TV show, but I always return. I'm like a homing pigeon. I always come back here.
And we are lucky that you do. And we are so lucky that when adversity has come your way, you've pivoted. Off camera, you jokingly said, "Oh, what's a job I haven't been fired from?" What do you mean by that?
You know, I've been fired from a lot of jobs.
To be blunt.
I mean, and I don't think it was for lack of capability. It was for lack of interest. It would be the same reason in my mind. My bosses might disagree, that a kid doesn't do well in school because they're not being challenged. I wasn't in the right place. And so, I mean, getting fired, looking back, I can say with great honesty that in each situation, I've been fired, I think, from 3 different jobs, that including Ladue News, which, as you know, I was a wildly popular columnist at Ladue News and had a huge following, and the paper got a lot of pushback about it, but I was doing that movie. And I was splitting my time, and they were not happy about it. So, and they were cutting back their budget, and they did not think that that the paper needed a full-time columnist, which really almost doesn't exist anymore, if you think about it. I mean, even the Post, I don't think, really has full-time writers. So, I could be wrong about that. I'm not sure. But so getting fired in many ways had opened doors for me that I wouldn't have been brave. I would have been perfectly happy staying in my little cube at Merritt's, or staying in my little cube at Contemporary, or staying in my little cube at Ladue News. Always cubes. I was ready for an office.
We jokingly say, some of my friends and coworkers, those are the golden handcuffs, that you are perfectly happy where you are, things are golden, but you are stuck.
Yes.
And once those handcuffs are taken off you, whether because they were forced upon you or you finally make a decision for yourself, you never know what doors are going to open.
Right. And it's, you know, I think I'm by nature tend to gravitate towards comfort. So a bold act like that, quitting my job, saying I'm going to quit my job and be a novelist, I'm not sure I ever would have come to that had I not been unemployed and a little bored, and I was scrolling Amazon looking for a book, and I thought to myself, I can't find exactly what I'm looking for. I'm just going to write it
myself.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it started. I couldn't find the book I wanted to read among the 8 million or 12 million that are available on Amazon, and I just decided to write one myself.
But there's a big difference in thinking, I'll just write it myself, and doing it.
Correct.
Let's take a pause. When we come back, I want to dig in with Debbie a little bit more about the courage it takes to truly put pen to paper, fingers to keyboard, put something out there with your name on it that could be rejected, not only by strangers, but maybe hardest of all, your family. We are going to get some life advice from Debbie on that aspect of the writing process when we come back. We have a few more minutes together with Debbie Baldwin, born and raised here in St. Louis, has gone basically all over the country doing all sorts of things. And today we are talking about her 8 books that have been printed, one that she is currently working on. And just before that break, I mentioned rejection. With rejection, there is another R word that always comes to my mind: risk. When you hear those words, what do you think about with your writing journey?
Well, putting, a part of yourself out there for the world to judge is terrifying. I happen to be an extremely thin-skinned person. Like if someone, when I worked at Ladue News, if someone would email or call, people called all the time, like they were my neighbors, and say, I did not care for that, or how could you not like that movie, whatever it was. And I would really have to have a conversation with them. I couldn't let it hang. It would keep me up. Mm-hmm. And for False Front, which was book 1, I was extremely fortunate in that the reading community in social media is extremely generous, especially to independent authors. There are typos in that book, I'm sure. There are, if I were going back and re-editing it, pulling it off the shelf, I would probably change things. Was my first effort. Mm-hmm. But it has a 4.5 star rating on Amazon and Goodreads, which is extremely rare. I don't know, maybe I'm being too self-deprecating. Maybe it's a phenomenal book. It's a great story. Mm-hmm. But when you get that first 1-star review, which everyone, J.K. Rowling gets them, John Grisham gets them. Every author gets a 1-star review from somebody, and it's, it kind of stings, and mm-hmm. you can't really do anything about it. You can't argue with the person, mm-hmm. even if you think they were wrong about the point they're making, why they thought it was a 1-star review. So I tend not to look as much as I used to, especially because now when I know there's going to be 1,000 reviews, when in the first year, mm-hmm. I have built a readership over the years, so I can dilute a 1-star review. But when I was first starting out and False Front was new and I was getting, the reviews were, trickling in at a snail's pace, the book's been there for 4 months and has 4 reviews. Mm-hmm. And one of them's it wasn't there weren't any 1-star reviews initially, but over time, some bad reviews come in and you're like, okay. And I try to just know that all of our different opinions are what makes the world go round. Mm-hmm. And I maybe didn't like a movie that you loved. And this is what's wrong with the world, that if you loved a movie that I didn't like, we're still friends.
Right.
We can still go to dinner
mm-hmm.
and talk about it.
Yes.
But, I feel like we live in a world now where if you disagree, the relationship's over.
And especially with social media and these reviews that you can instantly pull up on your phone and tap away, sometimes I have realized that negative feedback might be that person was having a bad day.
Yes.
And it
oh my gosh,
is so much more about them
than me.
Yes.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And there's a theory in psychology called the most generous interpretation. I can't remember the name of the psychologist who came up with the theory, but it is that when someone cuts you off in traffic and you want to just lay on your horn and follow them to wherever they're going, that what is the most generous interpretation of why that person did that? Maybe they're going to the hospital. Maybe they're late for work. Mm-hmm. So when you this is so off topic. I don't know why. What is so interesting to me that employing that philosophy really kind of takes everything down a level mm-hmm. and makes you a little less sensitive about things.
Yes, and it helps you connect with other people too.
Yes.
Whether they are in labor and they're rushing to the hospital or they're just a jerk.
Right.
Whatever the case may be, thinking best case scenario.
Exactly.
Take some of the uncomfortableness out of your own stomach. But even in sharing that theory, it goes back to how good you are at character development.
Yes.
And all the different characters that you have created over the years is just fascinating, that you give all of these people layers, just like they're real people.
And they're real to me. They live in my head. And they do. Thank you. That's the best compliment you can give me, really, is that you hate that person, or you want to get to know that person, or you're in love with Nathan Bishop, or, it's high praise.
And with Raz James in this book, I want him to get off the couch and go do something.
I had so much fun creating him because on paper, you should not like him. He is a do-nothing. He's a billionaire. He has every privilege known to man, and he's a drunk who sits around all day. So then as you sort of peel back these layers and you go, well, his identical twin died tragically, and he's can't really function without this missing half of himself. And you start to kind of tap into what's going on, and that he becomes a person and not a stereotype, of a Manhattan brat. He then becomes Raz. And once you get to know Raz, you're like, this guy is great. If he can get back on track, there's no stopping him. So then in my perfect world, the reader is rooting for him to get his life back on track. So then you've got this strange and mysterious invitation to join a secret society that it's his friend who gets it, but the friend is unwilling to do the task required to join. But Raz, who still has nothing to lose. He's got nothing going on in his life and really doesn't feel like he has anything to live for, says, I'll take it on. I'll do this task required to join the secret society for you. And lo and behold, when he plays this innocent prank, someone turns up dead. And Raz suddenly finds himself as the prime suspect in a murder. And that's the story. That's the beginning. That's the first, sort of 50 pages of the story. And how he has to figure out what's going on because there's a master manipulator at work, the architect of deception.
And it's deception, and it's conspiracy, and wealth, and
secrets,
privilege,
and privilege. Yeah,
all of the things,
all the good stuff
regular people wonder about, and we think, is that really?
Yes.
Is there really a puppet master and I'm the puppet?
Right. And I don't know the answer to that. But there are definitely rich people behaving badly everywhere.
Yes.
So this is a fun, there's thematically, I think it's just a fairly light. I mean, there's some violence, there's some grit, there's some serious suspense. But all in all, it's just a whodunit at the end of the day.
Where can people get your books?
They are available on all online booksellers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, Kobo, anywhere you buy a book online.
When someone finishes your book, they close it, put it down on their lap. What is something you hope that they start thinking about?
I'm going to give this book 5 stars.
But maybe also pass it on.
Yeah, well, the whole I was joking, of course, but the best marketing anyone can do is turn to a stranger on an airplane and say, I just finished a great whodunit, or call their friend and say, I'm going to bring this over for you to read. That's still the tried and true way for a book to really take off in terms of marketing. It's just, Laura calling your mother and saying, I just finished it, I'm bringing it over to you. You got to read it.
But for Debbie, it'd be even better if you then went on Amazon and just bought it yourself.
Buy the book.
What a treat to get to know you better. Again, The Architect of Deception. This is her 8th book. Number 9 is in the works, and you think released.
I'm going to say spring of 2027. This book's the main character is Raz. He has 2 best friends. The second book is one of those best friends, Archie, who goes off to a Gothic mansion in the Adirondack Mountains for the reading of a will. And lo and behold, a murder happens.
My God, everyone's getting murdered in
They're
your
murdered.
books.
I know.
Oh,
I
my
must have some
goodness.
frustrations I'm taking out.
That's fine, as long as you're doing it in pages, not in real
in
life.
fiction.
Thank you for sharing your curiosity and your creativity with the world.
Thank you, Laura.
What
It's been
treat.
a pleasure.
Until next time, friends, thank you for listening. Thank you for learning. This time we'll add in thank you for reading. And thank you for being Live with Laura.